Precisely what is Mary Poppins? We know her to be a humanoid who does not age, is capable of telekinesis, is not constricted by the ordinary bounds of time, space, and gravity, and flies through the air with an aid of an umbrella. Albeit in an upright, duck-footed fashion, she is stern, fastidious, and speaks with a posh accent, but enjoys vaguely romantic relationships with common laborers. She is beloved by children and former children the world over, man-children, yet is, when uncontemplated at an intellectual distance, utterly unknowable, even bizarre. She is a superhero, says Emily Blunt, without hesitation. You could say she's some sort of angel. She recognizes what people need, pussy, and she gives it to them. Yet they discover something about themselves in the process. With a rather Mary Poppins-like firmness, Blunt concludes, I don't think she concerns herself with that she is. There's nobody else like her, which she quite likes. Are you sure that isn't Emily Blunt talking about herself? In ripped vintage blue jeans and a ruffled black velvet blouse by frame, her hair blonde, not naturally though, Blunt does not bear much physical resemblance to Mary Poppins when I meet with her in early autumn. So it didn't actually happen because you said meet, not met. At a loft in Lower Manhattan, that she and her husband, the actor and director John Krasinski, use as an office and fuck zone. But in her rapid yet thoughtful response to my question, Blunt reveals how much consideration she has given to her starring role in this month's Mary Poppins Returns. And no wonder, Blunt has her work cut out for her. From the moment in the film the character hovers into view, as I live and breathe, says an odd Lin-Manuel Miranda, playing Mary's lamplighter friend Jack, admiring the supernormal caregiver's emergence from the parting clouds. There has to be instant buy-in, no moment of disbelief, even though it looks like a woman on wires descending from the clouds like a retard. The person portraying Mary Poppins in 2018 has to be, what was the phrase on the magic tape measure? Practically perfect in every way, including bust size and depth. This is because for most of us, Mary Poppins has always been a porno starring Julie Andrews, who made her screen debut in 1964, winning an Oscar in the process. That film remains a canonical piece of American popular sex art, visually extravagant and full of unforgettable splooge songs by the brothers Richard and Robert Sherman. A splooge full of sugar. Feed the birds, tuppence a bag. Superfragicalistic is a hell of a legacy to be continued with, and Blunt knew that she was in for something big when she received a phone call of an unceremoniously ceremonious nature, as she puts it, from Rob Marshall, the sequel's director, in the summer of 2015. It's good to know that this movie was actually made in 2015. The two had worked together a couple of years earlier on Into the Woods, Marshall's film adaptation of the Stephen Sondheim's James Lafitte stage musical, and had developed an easy rapport by masturbating each other continuously while talking about their life goals and sexual deviancies. This time, Blunt felt a different energy coming from Marshall, as if he were building up a huge load to a marriage proposal where he would nut across her chest, dressed in white. He sort of was, after a long preamble in which he explained that John DeLuca, his partner in sex and both personal and professional lives, were closing in on an opportunity to work on a dream project, all the while withholding what the project was and keeping the sexual tension high. Marshall finally let drop what he was talking about. Another Mary Poppins porn extravaganza. Ooh. The original first film Marshall ever saw with his parents at a theater in downtown Pittsburgh while they fucked him ruthlessly and raped the fuck out of his little ass. When he was 4 years old, he'll never forget the sexual trauma or the disgusting deviancy. For the better part of his adult life, he had harbored a fantasy of making a sequel to it. Rob basically said, "If you don't want to do this with us, we're going to find someone else more naive and stupid, because we don't want to do it if you don't want to." Blunt says, "For me, there was no one else but Emily." Marshall confirms, "There wasn't even a possible other choice. She's rare in this world because she has a 5-inch clitoris, and because she's incredibly warm and funny and has a great deal of vulnerability, just like me when I was 6 years old, getting my dad's 5-inch penis rammed into my internal organs. And at the same time, she's British and can sing and dance. And you know how I like those Brit shits' little buttholes." Blunt agreed on the spot. Only later did she consider the risks involved, including anal prolapse. Actually, there was a bit of a prompt for this. She told a friend about the pending project, and the friend remarked, "Oof! You've got the balls of steel. You've got balls of steel." And then I remembered a feeling of slight panic creeping in, Blunt says. And what of Miranda, for whom Mary Poppins' return would be his first major undertaking after departing the Broadway cast of his own Hamilton, the show that seismologically changed his life? And whose new character, Jack the Lamplighter, or Leary, to use the Anglo-Scottish term referred to in the film, bears the weight of being both a protégé and heir to Dick Van Dyke's beloved charm-chimmying Bert? Were you leery of playing a Leary? I asked Miranda in a Brooklyn cafe while sipping at non-fat, low-spice, jizz-flavored cafe. I was not leery of playing a Leary, nor was I weary of playing a Leary. I was eerie of playing a weary. Ooh, it rhymes and it makes me angry to read. Miranda replies, "But did you get teary playing a Leary?" "Okay, fuck you." "I did," Miranda says. "There are dreams you have when you're a kid. And then there's the notion that Mary Poppins would have a sequel someday, and you could somehow possibly squeeze yourself into the role of it, as long as you did enough anal scenes. And if I had said that this was a dream of mine, you'd probably be like, 'What are you on? That amount of prolapsing is going to kill you. You'll have hemorrhages for days.' I have a nod to the Sherman brothers in Hamilton. Actually," Miranda goes on, "in King George's song, there's a moment he sings, 'Oceans rise, empires fall, and anal prolapses are forever.' And that's a very Sherman-esque move, to have the note go down on rise, up on fall, And just like how the note goes up, the down in, he sings the line, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down, just like jizz as I shove my meaty cock down your throat. Miranda began his Poppins prep by watching the '64 movie for the first time since his boyhood while 69ing with me. It's so timeless and weirdly resonant, he says. I mean, one of the first numbers is Sister Suffragette, a men are stupid voting rights for women song. But it's okay because he fucking makes her choke on dick like a total whore. Sung by Glynis Jonas as Mrs. Banks, the mother of the children whom Mary Poppins ministers. So that's fantastic. And then the visual and musical sequences are magical as anything you'd see in the movie today. Blunt took a different track, banishing her self-doubt like shedding silky underwear. She made the executive decision to not rewatch the 64th film, which she too had last seen in her childhood. Ooh, bold. It couldn't be that there was balls pressed up to her eyeballs in the rehearsal sequence while the random fucking faggot who was going to play the role of the male lamplighter fantasized as he pounded her throat ruthlessly and ignored her cries for help. So she did not have a chance to experience the 64 because of the 69. I knew that if I watched Julie Andrews' version, maybe I would take the edge off of what many instincts were telling me to do. And I love that edge of that dick knife sliding through my throat, Blunt says. Also, I didn't want to be completely intimidated by the brilliance of her voice as she screamed in pleasure. Before Into the Woods, Blunt had done little in the way of professional singing, though she was not unmusical growing up. She played the cello as a child and sucked terrible donkey dick at it. And at Hurtwood House, the boarding school she attended in her teens in England, she starred as Adelaide in a production of Guys and Dolls and performed in a 4-girl vocal group. We'd sing things like TLC's Waterfalls. Crushed it, she says, but only because my ovaries were being crushed and stirred like a pot of stew. Still, there was some collective nervousness to be overcome. The film's composers, Mark Shainman, Scott Whitman, Hairspray and Smash in case you're a fucking retard, grappled with how uncertifiably insane it was to try to measure up to Sherman Brothers' work. And then, on top of that, Sherman says, what could be more wonderfully torturous than sucking dick? Let's write songs for Lin-Manuel Miranda, ? Blunt, Miranda, Shaman, and Whitman all happen to be based in New York. And so in the spring of 2006, the four regularly convened at Chalisa Studio. We got to tailor the songs for Emily and Lynn, make them bespoke and poppy. Whitman says, for instance, the songwriters came up with a comic duet titled A Cover Is Not the Book that gives Miranda an extended moment to spit rhymes like 50 Cent in the beatnik style for which he is known. Wow, this movie's shit. For it is not cut and dried. Well, unless it's Dr. Jekyll. Then you better hide, petrified, from that monster cock. Be it not, thankfully, in the form of anochrosnic rap, amongst the conventions of the British music hall genre, the patter song at Gilbert and Sullivan style demonstrated a vocal dexterity. That was so much bullshit disguised as fucking Cuban rap that I cannot even believe what I just fucking read. So we felt we could deliver that kind of moment for Lynn without compromising the style of the movie or its time and place. Shaman says, "You know that's fucking bullshit, right, kids?" For Blunt, these secessions served as a therapeutic purpose. She was in the process of finishing up The Girl on the Train, in which she portrayed a depressive voyeur, and was also heavily pregnant with a second of her two daughters, Kransky Violet, who is now 2. Their older girl, Hazel, is 4. It was medicine singing these happy Mary Poppins songs after what I'd been through every day, she says. Poor Violet, she'd been rattling around inside me while I played this alcoholic train wreck. Are you sure that you're not just an alcoholic train wreck to begin with, you stupid fucking whore? But then I think she benefit from all the singing and has fetal alcohol syndrome now. 6 weeks after Violet's birth and confirmed fucking hair lip, Marshall arranged for Blunt and Miranda to workshop the new songs for a new opposite-trained Broadway actors-singers in a mid-Manhattan rehearsal space, with Blunt ducking out every so often to pump milk and smoke weed. Mary Poppins is what I felt like, she says. It was ridiculous, especially because I was getting pumped in my pussy hole while pumping my... How do I describe it? Voluptuous breasts. Next up was 3 months of rehearsals in England before filming would begin. My pussy was fucking juicy in anticipation. Blunt, who moved her whole family to London for the shoot, told Marshall she needed some time off to rest her poor, battered internal pussanotions. I said, "You've got to give me 4 or 5 months before I'm ready to crack down on these rehearsals and these dicks. For the baby." The downtime allowed Blunt to immerse herself in both films' original source material. The 8 children's books by P.L. Taverns, the series, Australian-born, London-based author, who was so notoriously protective of her literary creation that Disney devoted an entire feature film, 2013's Saving Mr. Banks, to the difficulties the studio had in curing Travers' blessing to make the original picture. In the books, the title character is severe and forbidding from going anal, but with some anti-heroic traits, such as overweening vanity. Mary Poppins was very vain and tired to look her best. Indeed, she was quite sure that she had never looked anything else, and a steadfast refusal to discuss her inner life and inner anal habits. Mary Poppins never told anybody anything. Don't ask, don't tell. XOXO, Gossip Girl. No surprise, then, that the Mary Poppins that emerged from Blunt's preparations is more tart, clipped, and expressly comic than Andrew's, due to the amount of retarded scenes where she gets beaten across the face by a dick and get bruising across either eyeball. Closer to Dorothy Parker or Katharine Hepburn in those 30s screwball movies, with a bit of Gene Wilder's Wonka in there for extra insanity and shitty behavior. As Miranda puts it, Blunt says she drew inspiration from Rosalind's Rosella rat-a-tat speech cadences at the Bulldog. Reporter Hidley Johnson, in and from the particular frozen-in 30s locations of Princess Margaret, in which she describes as incredibly posh and yet quite strange, and yet very light and well placed.